Good afternoon, everyone. A few things at the top, and then I'd be happy to take your questions. Secretary Austin returns home today from his historic 13th trip to the Indo-Pacific. Following the Reagan National Defense Forum last weekend, he traveled to Japan for his fourth official visit to build on historic progress made among our Japanese allies and U.S. military stationed in Japan. From meeting sailors aboard the USS George Washington to meeting with Prime Minister Ishiba, this final trip was an important opportunity for the Secretary to engage on a wide range of defense activities across the alliance, to include ongoing efforts to upgrade U.S. Forces Japan to a joint force headquarters, marking one of the strongest improvements in our military ties with Japan in 70 years. We have long said that the U.S.-Japan alliance is the cornerstone for peace and security in the Indo-Pacific. And on his final trip to the region, Secretary Austin saw firsthand that the military alliance between the United States and Japan is stronger than ever. Shifting to the Middle East, the department continues to monitor the evolving situation in Syria and will work with our interagency partners and with regional stakeholders, including Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, Turkey, and Israel. It's in our national security interest that Syria emerges from this dynamic period as a stable, secure, and sovereign state, and that the Syrian people have a say in determining what their future looks like. And it is also in our national security interest that ISIS can't exploit the ongoing situation on the ground, which is why the department has no force posture changes to announce in the region, and we maintain our current force posture presence in Syria to defeat and counter ISIS militants and protect our forces against any threats. Earlier today, Secretary Austin spoke with Israeli Minister of Defense Katz. The Secretary reiterated that the United States is closely consulting with our international partners to support the implementation of the ceasefire with Lebanon. He also told Minister Katz that the United States is continuing to monitor events in Syria, supports a peaceful and inclusive political transition, and will continue the mission to prevent ISIS from reestablishing a safe haven on Syrian territory. Secretary Austin emphasized the importance of close consultation between the United States and Israel as events develop in Syria. And we should have a readout coming soon. Lastly, earlier this week, the Missile Defense Agency, in cooperation with Indo-PACOM and other DoD partners, successfully conducted a live intercept of a ballistic missile target, marking the first ballistic missile defense test executed from Guam. During the test, the Aegis Guam system intercepted an air-launched medium-range ballistic missile target off the coast of Guam. The event marked a pivotal step taken in the defense of Guam and provides critical support to the overall concept for the future Guam defense system. A release with additional details on the event is available on the Missile Defense Agency website. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions. Tara.
Hi, thanks, Sabrina. I want to ask first about Ukraine. There were some senior U.S. officials earlier today who warned that Russia is close to firing another Oreshnik intermediate-range ballistic missile. Can you confirm this, and also why do you think the U.S. is kind of putting this out there now ahead of a potential launch?
So Putin has said publicly that Russia intends to launch another experimental Oreshnik missile, as you mentioned. It's possible that Russia could do it in the coming days. I don't have an exact date for you. I think it's important to note that should Russia choose to launch this type of missile, it's not going to be a game changer on the battlefield. It's just yet another attempt to inflict harm and casualties in Ukraine. We've seen this before. They're trying to use every weapon that they have in their arsenal to intimidate Ukraine. But of course, Ukraine, with the United States, other partners around the world, continues to have our support as they, fight every single day on the battlefield.
Has Ukraine asked for any additional defenses given Russia's saber rattling on this missile?
Ukraine's priority defenses one of them remains air defenses, and that's something that we continue to flow to Ukraine, whether it be through USAI packages, like you saw the Secretary announce at the Reagan Defense Forum, nearly $1 billion in security assistance, and then, of course, through presidential drawdown packages. So air defense is one of those priority requests, and we're continuing to honor that in our commitments.
And then on Syria, just one quick one. Are U.S. forces still doing partnered operations with SDF? And how has all of the different changing dynamics in the north affected those operations?
So there's been no change to our partnership with the SDF when it comes to ensuring the defeat of ISIS. I don't have recent partnered raids to speak to, but you did see over the weekend Central Command take strikes against ISIS camps and leaders in the Badia Desert. But there's been no change to our work or partnership with SDF forces. We continue to work with them. General Kurilla, our Central Command commander, was actually in the region engaging with his counterparts. So that work remains ongoing. Jen.
Sabrina, can you tell me what the Pentagon is doing to address this issue of drone sightings over New Jersey? It's near sensitive installations. The FBI is involved. What is the Pentagon doing?
Sure. So at this time, aware of those drone sightings that have been reported, at this time we have no evidence that these activities are coming from a foreign entity or the work of an adversary. We're going to continue to monitor what is happening, but at no point were our installations threatened when this activity was occurring.
Can you rule out that these are American drones or U.S. military drones?
These are not U.S. military drones. Again, this is being investigated by local law enforcement. What our initial assessment here is that these are not drones or activities coming from a foreign entity or adversary.
Representative Jeff Van Drew, who is a Republican from New Jersey, was just on the air saying that Iran launched a mothership probably about a month ago that contains these drones, and that mothership is off the coast of the east coast of the United States. Is there any truth to that?
There is not any truth to that. There is no Iranian ship off the coast of the United States, and there's no so-called mothership launching drones towards the United States. Phil.
Just a few questions really quick on Syria. Did General Kurilla speak to Secretary Austin before or after his trip to Syria? Can you give us any details about what he accomplished, if anything, on that trip? And then also on Syria, Reuters is reporting that the Syrian rebel leader al-Gulani has said he's going to work with international organizations to secure chemical weapons sites in Syria. I'm wondering whether the U.S. Has reached out to him and whether there's going to be any contribution of U.S. intelligence to ensure that they have those sites secured.
So as you mentioned, General Kurilla is in the region. I believe Central Command did put out a readout of what he's doing. He was in Syria and Iraq and is continuing travel throughout the region, I think, through the week. I will say that, like any combatant commander, they're regularly in touch with the Secretary and with OSD, so we remain in close contact as he continues his travels in the region. In terms of your question on chemical weapons, it's something that we are certainly focused and concerned about, and the potential use of chemical agents falling into the wrong hands in Syria. That work is really being done through other partners. We here at the department are trying to make sure that those do not fall into the hands of bad actors, but the work on the ground is being done through other partners, not through the United States.
Just to follow up then, so has the Secretary spoken with General Kurilla since the fall of Damascus? And does this rebel leader's assurances on chemical weapons give you any comfort, or are you having this group say they're going to secure them, not? Is it a problem for the United States given its position on this group?
Yeah, of course, the Secretary has been in regular touch with General Kurilla post-fall of the Assad regime. In terms of what this leader is saying on the ground about chemical weapons, I mean, these are good things. We welcome this type of rhetoric, but actions have to meet words as well. So we're going to continue to work with the groups that we have relationships with. Again, our focus is that these chemical weapons do not fall into the wrong hands. Yes, yeah.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. Can you confirm that the SDF shot down a US MQ-9 Reaper on Monday?
I do know that an MQ-9 did go down in the region, but I believe it's being investigated, so I can't confirm the cause of why it went down.
Who could it be?
Again, we're looking into that. When we have more information, we'd be happy to provide that.
Separately, or more like on the same subject,
Sure.
But do you know, to your knowledge, that did the United States provide SDF with anti-aircraft capabilities?
I'm not going to speak specifically to all the capabilities that we provide the SDF. It's we work with them when it comes to the defeat ISIS mission. That's something that's ongoing, and as I mentioned to Tara, it's our mission of why we are in Syria. But I'm just not going to get into more specifics on that.
Just one last question, if possible. So you've been through different channels, not just the Pentagon, but also different institutions. You've been asking Ankara to halt opening any new fronts and halting any new offensive against the SDF. Do you feel that those calls have been successful so far? And Secretary Blinken is also headed to Ankara. I know that's not your institution, but how hopeful are you that those talks are going to be fruitful or be successful in stopping any kind of new offensives against the SDF?
Look, we have a great relationship with our Turkish counterpart, or counterparts, I should say, throughout the administration. As you mentioned, we have the Secretary of State going to the region, I think this week, or if not today. Secretary Austin engaged his Turkish counterpart earlier this week. So the conversations are ongoing, understanding that the dynamics on the ground in Syria are dynamic. And, Turkey certainly faces threats from within Syria, and they have the right to also protect themselves. But that's why we're continuing to have these conversations, not just with Turkey, but with other stakeholders in the region when it comes to Syria. Natasha.
Thanks, Sabrina. So going off of that, the fighting between the Kurds and the Turkish-backed groups obviously has raised some concerns about the security of the ISIS facilities and camps, the facilities holding ISIS members and their families in northern Syria. So how confident are you all that those facilities are secure? Have any of them been overrun at this point?
Well, the facilities that you're referring to are, they're pretty far apart from where these rebel groups are asserting their power, like in Damascus and the northwestern side. We're in the northeastern part of Syria where those camps are. So the prisons remain secure and under SDF control. I'm not tracking anything that's been overrun.
All of the prisons remain under SDF control.
Yeah. As far as I'm aware, are you about to tell me that I'm incorrect here? No, when it comes to the Defeat ISIS mission, that is enduring. That's something that we're continuing to work with SDF. Those prisons remain in control. Constantine.
Thanks, Sabrina. So going back to the drone that was shot down. So on Monday, you said that you guys aren't working on a formal deconfliction channel with HTS, the folks running the show in Damascus. Does this incident put more urgency behind having some sort of formal communication channel?
Well, we're working through groups and partners that do have relationships with HTS. So we have ways of communicating messages. Again, of course, we want to work towards any deconfliction, especially our number one priority, and I think the Secretary spoke to this earlier today, is U.S. forces in the region, and then to ensure that enduring defeat of ISIS, which is the mission set of why U.S. forces are in Syria. But again, we have ways of communicating with HTS through different back channels, just not going to go beyond that.
Pivoting slightly then, would it be fair to say that this incident underscores sort of the chaotic nature of the situation in Syria and that U.S. assets and troops are in greater danger now than they were before the fall of Damascus?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think it's an ever-changing, ongoing, dynamic situation that's happening in Syria. You just had a regime change and completely toppled. Of course, that presents, as we've said, great opportunity and also great risk. But when it comes to U.S. force posture in the region, there's been no change to our force posture. Our forces, General Kurilla was just in the region. We're going to do everything that we need to protect our forces there and to ensure that a terrorist group like ISIS doesn't take advantage of this moment and seek to move back into that, to the Damascus area and remain in a place where they are significantly degraded and diminished. And that remains our focus.
So just to be clear,
Sure.
The downing of the drone is not an indication that U.S. forces are under greater danger than they...
I would not look into it like that. Janie.
Thank you, Sabrina. Excuse me. A couple of occasions on South Korea, United States, and North Korea. Is the Defense Secretary Austin canceling his visit to South Korea due to chaos of the lack of a counterpart?
I think we spoke to this, Janie. The Secretary did postpone his visit to the Republic of Korea just given recent events. Again, he continued to the region. The ROC remains we have an incredible relationship with our counterparts there, and that's going to endure. But, Right now, the secretary is wrapping up his trip to Japan. He's coming back. It was his 13th visit to the region. I think you can see the amount of emphasis that this administration and this department has put on the Indo-Pacific.
Is a normal cooperation between South Korea and United States currently working?
Yeah, cooperation conversations continue on.
North Korea, there is possibility that North Korea may misjudge due to the current chaotic situation in South Korea. What kind of preparation does the United States ally have for such eventuality?
Well, I think, and you've certainly seen, there's an ongoing democratic political process that's playing out in the Republic of Korea. Certainly wouldn't want any actor to take advantage of that. We have to let that process play out. What we're focused on and what the Secretary has emphasized is the deepening of cooperation between Japan, between the ROC, between other Indo-Pacific partners, which is why you saw the Secretary embark and return from his 13th visit to the region. Yeah.
Thank you, Sabrina. You always mention that you are supporting the SDF against any ISIS threat in the region. Now all the other parties, the opposition forces, are against Daesh, and they fought Daesh in the past years. Now there were some clashes in Manbij, and the SDF retreated from there, saying that the U.S. mediated for them. Who did you mediate with, and what would be your position in the future in any other confrontation between any other group with the SDF?
So I'm sorry, what is the question about ISIS, or is it about the Manbij region?
It's the Manbij region, since the SDF and the forces there were not fighting Daesh or ISIS. They were fighting actually infighting between these two groups on Manbij. So they retreated with saying that the U.S. mediated in their behalf. So what would be your position in the future in similar situations when SDF comes in front of some other Syrian groups, not ISIS?
So, there's a number of stakeholders in the region. We continue to work with our Turkish counterparts to, urge for any de-escalation or confrontation in that region. Our assessment right now is that SDF is not operating in the Manbij area. We're focused on the mission, which is why we are in Syria, to continue that enduring defeat of ISIS. That's what we partner with SDF on. Appreciate the question, but I'm just not going to get into more details about that area.
Another thing, like in the same area that's controlled by the SDF right now, there is a specific territory which is, according to dual agreements between the Syrian and Turkish government, is a Turkish ground, actually, Süleymanşah in Karakozak area, the right eastern shore of the Euphrates. So is there any talks about this? Because Turkey took the remains of the historic commander from this area due to ISIS threat to the historic site. So now, is there a way to go back to normal, and do you follow anything about this?
Trying to follow the thread of the question here. Again, we're going to continue to engage with Turkey. We have our Secretary of State traveling to the region. General Kurilla is in the region. These are ongoing conversations, and of course we understand the threats that Turkey faces and, our partners in the region. I'm just not going to shed more light than what I've said already. Tom.
Hiya. Thanks, Sabrina. The readout that you did at the top between Secretary Austin and Minister Katz, you talked about the ceasefire implementation with Lebanon. I don't think you said anything about possibility of new ceasefire talks in Gaza.
Sorry?
New ceasefire talks for Gaza. Was there
I'm sorry. I was just giving a very top-line summary. That's why I said a more fulsome readout is coming.
Minister Katz said that there was a discussion of there's a chance at the moment for a new deal that hopefully leads to the release of hostages. So
the Secretary and Minister Katz did discuss the ongoing situation in Gaza. I mean, the Secretary always impresses upon his counterpart the need for a ceasefire. One of the things that this administration continues to push for is the release of hostages. We still have Americans that are held hostage. Again, we should have a more fulsome readout coming. But one of the other things that the Secretary also emphasized is the need to get more humanitarian aid into Gaza.
Thanks. And then on the situation in Syria, are there any DoD personnel in any capacity currently in Damascus or any other places where the prisons, involved in any sort of search for Austin Tice or anyone else like that?
So there are no DoD personnel. There are only DoD personnel in the areas that we operate, which are part of the continued de-ISIS mission. In terms of Austin Tice, I don't have a U.S. role or military assistance to speak to today. Of course, the ongoing developments in Syria could present an opportunity for us to get more information. What we want to see is him returned home, reunited with his family. But I don't have anything to speak to in terms of a U.S. military role when it comes to Austin Tice.
So as the situation evolves, then there could be a role for U.S. or DoD personnel to go in and assist with those.
Yeah, today I just don't have any role to speak to, though. Yes.
Thank you, Sabrina. On recent Secretary's trip to Japan, could you please elaborate on the development related to discussions on upgrading the alliance command and control? And also, before the presidential transition, does the Pentagon plan to announce any specific direction or decisions on U.S.-Japan command and control issues?
I can't speak to future announcements, even though we still have a few weeks to go before the transition takes place. I'm not aware of any more announcements coming, but I'm not going to rule it out either. In terms of the relationship with Japan and the upgrading of those headquarters, I think you've heard us speak to that and what we're going to do. But that is a phased approach. It's it's going to take some time to continue to upgrade that Joint Force headquarters. Jeff.
Thanks very much. Two questions. One, with the airstrikes that CENTCOM and the U.S. carried out against ISIS in central Syria on Sunday, is there any updated assessment of who you hit, what you hit, how badly damaged ISIS is as a result? And then some Syrian Kurdish officials have said that since Golani, HTS, and the other rebels began their campaign and ultimately ousted the Assad regime, that they have seen an uptick in ISIS activity and in ISIS attacks and plotting. What is the Pentagon seeing from ISIS right now as you fear that it will try to take advantage of this situation?
Well, that is what we've been saying, is that we are concerned that ISIS would use the dynamics and the ongoing situation on the ground in Syria to try and take advantage of that, which is why we did what we did on Sunday. We at approximately 5 locations, we hit 75 targets with a number of different airframes and platforms to take out capabilities that ISIS would use, or we thought they could use, to try and take advantage of the situation that's unfolding on the ground. In terms of ISIS plots and planning, ISIS still remains a threat. I don't have anything to speak to in terms of an uptick of attacks, but you saw us take pretty significant action over the weekend, and we've been doing that, pre the fall of the Assad regime, and we're going to continue to do that as Syria goes through this transition political process.
Is the assessment then that those airstrikes have in fact deterred ISIS, at least since Sunday, of carrying out more attacks?
Well, again, we're taking capability off the map for them. So, what they choose to do, that's for them to speak to. I can only speak to what we did. And in terms of, I'm sorry, and you asked about our ongoing assessment of how successful those strikes are. Our initial assessment is that they were successful and that, we did kill a number of ISIS operatives in the desert, but it's going to take some time to get you more fidelity on the strikes. Sure.
Follow up on that. Mm-hmm. What is the U.S. military doing to protect the SDF from Turkey and Turkish airstrikes?
So, continuing to have conversations with our counterparts. And while I won't speak to any hypotheticals, we're going to continue to engage the SDF. We have ways to deconflict, of course. And the Secretary spoke recently to his Turkish counterpart, and I'm sure he'll continue to do so.
Thing on Congressman Jeff Van Drew. He says that the drones in New Jersey should be shot down. Is there any reason not to bring down these drones to figure out what they are?
Well, that's a decision for local law enforcement. If a drone or any activity is a threat to military installations, they always have the right for self-defense, and they can engage to respond to any potential risks. But with some of the drone activity or activities that you're referring to, there was not a threat to any military installation, so they didn't feel the need to engage. Yes, in the back.
On those airstrikes over the weekend, categorically then you're saying that the US only targeted ISIS military assets. You did not target any Syrian military assets.
We target the strikes over the weekend that happened on December 8th. targeted an ISIS camps and leaders that were operating in the Badia Desert.
And since then, you're not targeting Syria.
I have no other strikes to speak to today.
And giving to Israel as it targets Syrian military assets and invades Syria.
So I would let Israel speak to its own operations. I think what you're referring to is the operations that they're conducting to eliminate what are threats to their security, which include, chemical weapons, missiles, rockets that were that the Assad regime controlled. They have legitimate security concerns. They have a right to self-defense. It is their own operations. We're not giving them any support when it comes to those operations.
There's one thing you keep talking about. There's no change in the U.S. force posture in Syria. Under what legal authority, either international or national, does the U.S. have a force posture in Syria?
I'm sorry, what is the question?
Under what legal authority, either national or international, does the U.S. have a troop presence, a force posture?
We've had a troop presence and arrangement there for a number of years. Again, we continue to operate with the SDF to ensure the enduring defeat of ISIS. That has been our mission. That has been our mission from the very beginning. Jared.
Again, on the Syria situation, there are some reports that Turkey-backed rebels near Manbij and Kobani have been still launching artillery and drone attacks in the area. And I think Raqqa today was hit with what the SDF said was a Turkish-backed drone attack. This is after the U.S. brokered the SDF withdrawal from Manbij, which the SDF is calling a ceasefire. How can the department ensure stability in eastern Syria and maintain security at the ISIS prisons if the department can't defend the SDF from SNA attack, or can they? Is OIR authorized to do that, or is this left up to the State Department right now?
The OIR mission and scope still remains the Defeat ISIS mission. That is in coordination and working with the SDF on the ground, whether it be partnered raids or other engagement activities. It is a partnership with the S to ensure that ISIS can no longer resurge to the threat that they were many, many years ago. Again, and I think I've answered this, but we're going to continue to engage with our Turkish counterparts. We're going to continue to work so that there is deconfliction. At the end of the day, though, the SDF is can speak to their own operations on where they're operating. We can only speak to our partnership with them when it comes to the de-ISIS mission.
And if I could just follow up, I'm wondering if you can confirm something we reported earlier, that a senior U.S. official told the SDF that the U.S. military cannot protect them if they do not withdraw from Manbij and relocate east of the Euphrates, that the U.S. cannot protect them in that area if they don't do that. Is that true?
Yeah, I can't confirm that. I'm not going to speak to an anonymous official's quote. Tara, and then I'll come.
Thanks. I just wanted to circle back to the Oreshnik missile.
Sure.
When U.S. officials discussed the potential launching earlier today, and you've just discussed it at the podium, is that based on an intelligence assessment, or what's prompting kind of this early warning?
Yeah, this was based on an intelligence assessment that it's possible that Russia could use this Oreshnik missile in the coming days. And so, they have used this type of capability before. I know you reported on it then. Again, I think the point of us getting out this information is to also ensure that, this is not going to be a silver bullet change to the battlefield. The war is going to continue, and our support for Ukraine is going to continue.
Does that intelligence include any assessment of what targets it might strike?
I'm just not going to be able to give you more details on that. Yes.
So commercial satellite photos came out yesterday showing that the Russian Navy vacated their base in Tartus, in addition to their military air base further south. Is there any concern from the building or from y'all that the Russian Navy and the Russian military writ large are going to develop some type of basing rights for those locations? Everything looked pretty intact when they left. Is there a concern that there's going to be a relationship with the Russian Ministry of Defense and the new regime in Syria going forward from the Pentagon?
Well, we don't know what the new path forward in Syria looks like. In terms of Russian assets, they just had one of their key political allies ousted. So their presence, their political prowess within the Middle East region is significantly reduced now that Assad is gone. We're seeing Russia consolidate assets, and to your point, some naval vessels leaving that area. Again, it remains to be seen what the path forward is in Syria. that is up for the Syrian people to decide. So I can't speak for what future relationships could look like, only to say that, with the fall of Assad, and Russia continue to be pulled into this, continuing their fight in Ukraine. I mean, they are clearly at a loss, and they are clearly expending more material, more capability, more people on the battlefield, and losing their, stronghold, which you just saw happen with the Assad regime falling.
I mean, but those facilities weren't sabotaged. Those airfields can be used. Those ports can be used. I mean, if it was a full exit, you would expect that you'd want to deny follow-on forces to be able to use those.
Well, you'd have to ask the Russians why they're doing what they're doing. I mean, what we're seeing is a consolidation of assets, including, some Russian forces leaving Syria. What they're doing with their facilities and bases, that's for them to speak to. Yeah.
Thank you, madam. Two quick questions. One, this is a Human Rights Week in Washington or around the globe. When U.S. military withdrew from Afghanistan, some agreements were made, promises were made by the Taliban to the U.S. and to the U.S. military, but they are not standing up because especially against women. What role do you think U.S. military is still playing there in Afghanistan to protect those behind, especially women?
I think it's pretty clear we don't have a military role in Afghanistan anymore.
And second, if there is any role, U.S. military role in Bangladesh?
I mean, other than, basic mill-to-mill ties. I mean, is there something more specific that you're asking about?
No, because there are atrocities going on against minorities in Bangladesh, and its situation is very bad over there right now this time.
Yeah, that would be, I mean, that's more of diplomatic conversations and engagements than mill-to-mill channels. I do have one question on the phone, and then I'm happy to come back in the room right here. Howard Altman, Warzone.
Thanks, appreciate it. Just want to go back to the comments by Congressman Van Drew. Has the Pentagon spoken to him, or has any plans to speak to him? And is there any sense in the Pentagon that there's a frenzy, a hysteria here that's overblown in terms of some of these sightings? And has the Pentagon assessed any of them to be confirmed to be drones as opposed to aircraft or something else?
Thanks, Howard, for the question. I mean, local law enforcement, FBI is conducting an investigation and looking into this. I mean, there's initial assessments are that these are drones and potentially, could be small airplanes. It could be a number of things that people are seeing and reporting. But again, that's, for the investigation to uncover. And so I just can't speak to that more. In terms of, a frenzy, I think it's completely right that people report these sightings and that there is an investigation into, what they are seeing. But I think what's also important to remember is that at no time were our military installations or our people ever under any threat. And if they were, of course, the base commanders have the ability to engage these drones if they do pose a threat. Can I just go one here and then? Uh-huh.
If you don't know what they are, how can you say they're not a foreign adversary?
Our initial assessment is that this is not the work of a foreign adversary or a foreign entity. That is our initial assessment. Yes, one more.
I want to ask on the Osprey, which was reportedly grounded in the wake of a security concern. Could you share some latest development on the aircraft? And I'm also wondering how you are communicating with allies such as Japan, which has not resumed its operation.
So I think you've seen, each service makes their own decisions on when it comes to the Osprey. We remain, as a department, committed to ensuring the safety of our aircraft and our platforms. And we continue to underscore that value at every single level. I think the Navy, the Air Force, and Marine Corps all make different decisions about the Osprey, and some, have implemented an operational pause. For more information on that, I'd refer you to each service. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.